What your birthday month says about your spirit animal will shock you, not because it predicts your future, but because it exposes the part of you that has always been operating quietly beneath your awareness. From the moment you are born, you arrive with a certain inner rhythm. This rhythm is not fate, not a sentence, and not an excuse. It is energy. It shapes how you react under pressure, how you pursue what you want, and how you protect yourself when the world pushes back. Most people spend their lives reacting to this energy without ever understanding it. And that is why it feels shocking when it is finally reflected back to them. Your spirit animal is not something you become. It is something you recognize. It represents instinct before it is trained and power before it is refined. When you understand this, you stop looking at your personality as random and start seeing patterns. Some people move through life with quiet intensity, observing more than they speak. Others are driven by motion, restlessness, and the need for freedom. Some carry deep emotional currents, while others operate with sharp focus and precision. None of these are better or worse. They are simply different expressions of inner energy. Your birth month aligns with cycles of nature, with light and darkness, expansion and contraction. These cycles influence temperament, not destiny. A person born in one part of the year may naturally carry discipline and endurance, while another may carry adaptability and vision. But here is the truth most people miss. Raw instinct without awareness becomes weakness. The same energy that could make you powerful will destroy your progress if it remains unconscious. This is why your spirit animal has both power and shadow. The predator has focus, but also aggression. The observer has wisdom, but also detachment. The leader has confidence, but also pride. When people hear about spirit animals, they cling to the power and deny the shadow. That denial is where suffering begins. The shadow does not disappear because you ignore it. It grows stronger. It starts making decisions for you when you are tired, emotional, or under pressure. Knowing your spirit animal through your birth month is not about entertainment. It is about awareness. Awareness creates choice. Choice creates control. Control creates mastery. Without awareness, you are not leading your nature. You are being dragged by it. You think you are choosing, but you are reacting. You think you are strong, but your strength is uncontrolled. Many people try to change who they are. They say they need to be less intense, less emotional, less cautious, less ambitious. This is a mistake. You are not here to change your nature. You are here to refine it. Refinement means directing energy, not suppressing it. It means building discipline around instinct so that your power serves you instead of sabotaging you. Look at animals in nature. They do not apologize for their traits. They do not compare themselves endlessly to others. They operate within their design, and within that design they are efficient, present, and grounded. A predator does not chase everything it sees. A bird does not fly endlessly without rest. There is restraint, timing, and awareness. That is mastery. When you understand what your birth month reveals about your inner energy, you stop asking why life feels difficult in certain patterns. You start seeing where your nature is untrained. If you are constantly exhausted, your drive may be undisciplined. If you are constantly conflicted, your sensitivity may be unmanaged. If you are constantly isolated, your independence may have turned into avoidance. These are not flaws. They are signals. The shock is not in discovering your spirit animal. The shock is realizing how much of your life has been shaped by instinct rather than intention. How many words were spoken without thought? How many decisions were made out of fear or impulse? How many opportunities were lost, not because you were incapable, but because your energy lacked direction? When awareness enters, everything changes. You stop fighting yourself. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop waiting for motivation. You begin training your nature the way a warrior trains skill. Calmly, repeatedly, without drama. You learn when to push and when to pause. You learn when to act and when to observe. You learn how to use your power without letting it use you. Your birth month does not define who you will become, but it reveals what you must master. That is the real message. Not prediction, not superstition, but responsibility. Responsibility to understand yourself deeply enough that your strength does not turn against you. Responsibility to refine your instincts so they serve your purpose. Responsibility to stop calling patterns fate when they are simply unexamined behavior repeating itself. When you finally see your nature clearly, you stop being shocked by life. You stop being shocked by your reactions. You stop being shocked by your struggles. Instead, you become steady, focused, grounded. And that is when the true power of understanding your spirit animal emerges, not as a label, but as a tool for self-mastery carried quietly in how you move, how you speak, how you decide, and how you respond when the world tests you in moments where instinct once ruled, but awareness now stands present and in control. Your birth month reflects your inner energy, not your fate. This idea challenges the common belief that life is a rigid script written before you even take your first breath. Inner energy is not a prediction, a sentence, or a limitation. It is a starting point, a natural vibration that influences how you respond to the world, how you move through challenge, and how you interpret meaning. Fate suggests something fixed and unavoidable, but energy is fluid. It can be trained, refined, strengthened, or wasted. The month you are born into does not trap you in a box. It reveals the raw material you were given to work with. Every human being enters life carrying a certain rhythm. Some arrive with calm, grounded energy, others with intensity, curiosity, or deep sensitivity. This rhythm is shaped by cycles of nature, seasons of light and darkness, and the subtle conditions present at the beginning of life. But rhythm is not direction. Two people can carry the same inner energy and live completely different lives. One may master it and rise with discipline, while the other may be ruled by it and remain stuck in reaction. The difference is not destiny, it is awareness. When people hear interpretations tied to birth months, they often misunderstand them as predictions of success or failure. This is where confusion begins. Inner energy is not a promise of greatness, nor is it a warning of struggle. It is simply a lens through which you experience the world. A person with intense energy may feel emotions more strongly, react faster, and burn brighter, but without control, this same energy can lead to chaos, exhaustion, and conflict. A person with calm energy may feel steady and patient, but without intention, this can turn into passivity or avoidance. Energy itself is neutral. What matters is how it is directed. The mistake many people make is using personality descriptions as excuses. They say, "This is just how I am," and stop growing. But inner energy is not meant to justify behavior. It is meant to be understood and trained. Awareness transforms instinct into choice. When you recognize your natural tendencies, you gain the power to pause instead of react. You stop being surprised by your own emotions. You stop fighting yourself. This is where real strength begins, not in changing who you are, but in mastering what already exists within you. Nature offers countless examples of this truth. Fire can warm a home or burn it down. Water can nourish life or cause destruction. Wind can push a ship forward or tear it apart. None of these forces are evil or good by nature. They become constructive or destructive depending on control and direction. Human energy works the same way. Your birth month may reveal whether your inner fire burns hot or slow, whether your mind moves quickly or deeply, whether your emotions flow gently or intensely. But it does not decide what you will build with that fire, that mind, or those emotions. Believing that fate controls everything creates weakness. It removes responsibility and replaces it with resignation. If success or failure is already decided, effort becomes meaningless. But understanding energy creates responsibility. It tells you that you are not powerless, but you are accountable. You are responsible for refining your impulses, sharpening your focus, and aligning your actions with intention. This is harder than believing in fate, but it is also far more empowering. Inner energy also changes over time. What begins as raw intensity in youth can become calm strength with discipline. What begins as sensitivity can evolve into deep wisdom. The energy revealed at birth is not the final form, it is the foundation. Just as a seed contains potential, but not the finished tree, your birth energy contains possibilities, not conclusions. Growth depends on conditions, effort, and patience. Another misunderstanding is the idea that some energies are superior to others. There is no better or worse birth energy. Each carries strengths and weaknesses. Those who move fast must learn stillness. Those who think deeply must learn action. Those who feel strongly must learn control. Those who remain calm must learn courage. Balance is not given at birth. It is earned through awareness and practice. The moment you compare energies and rank them, you miss the purpose entirely. Understanding that your birth month reflects inner energy rather than fate shifts how you view challenges. Difficult moments stop feeling like punishments and start feeling like training. If you know your energy tends toward impatience, obstacles become opportunities to develop restraint. If you know your energy tends toward caution, challenges become invitations to step forward. Life stops happening to you and starts working with you. This perspective also changes how you judge others. When you recognize that people operate from different inner energies, you become less reactive and more observant. You stop taking everything personally. You begin to see behavior as untrained energy rather than intentional harm. This does not mean you tolerate disrespect, but it allows you to respond with clarity instead of emotion. Understanding energy creates calm. Calm creates control. Ultimately, the purpose of knowing your inner energy is not entertainment or validation. It is self-mastery. Knowledge without discipline is useless. Awareness without action changes nothing. The real work begins when you stop asking what your birth month says about you and start asking how you are training the energy it reveals. Because the truth is simple but uncomfortable. The energy you fail to control will control you, shaping your habits, your relationships, and your decisions until you believe it is fate, when in reality it is untrained instinct repeating itself again and again, waiting for awareness to step in and take command of the direction it moves toward, how it expresses itself in moments of pressure, how it reacts when challenged, how it responds when ignored, how it behaves when rewarded, how it acts when no one is watching, how it either evolves through discipline or remains trapped in the same patterns, repeating not because it was destined to, but because it was never consciously guided. Spirit animals represent discipline, instinct, and self-mastery because they reflect the most honest form of existence in nature. An animal does not pretend, does not overthink its identity, and does not seek validation. It moves according to instinct. But that instinct is refined through survival, repetition, and awareness of its environment. When humans speak of spirit animals, they are not talking about fantasy or symbolism meant for entertainment. They are pointing toward qualities that already exist within the human nervous system, waiting to be recognized, trained, and directed. Discipline is the first lesson embodied by animals. In the wild, discipline is not taught through words, but through consequence. An animal learns quickly what actions lead to survival and what actions lead to danger. There is no room for excuses or self-pity. This kind of discipline is direct and unforgiving, yet it produces clarity. When humans lack discipline, they suffer confusion. They hesitate, contradict themselves, and repeat mistakes while hoping for different outcomes. The spirit animal reminds you that discipline is not restriction. It is alignment. It is the ability to act in harmony with reality rather than fantasy. Instinct is often misunderstood as something primitive or uncontrolled. In truth, instinct is intelligence stored in the body. It is the result of countless experiences compressed into immediate response. Animals trust their instincts because hesitation can mean death. Humans, however, are often disconnected from instinct because they are overwhelmed by noise, opinions, and constant stimulation. The idea of a spirit animal is not about becoming reckless or impulsive, but about reconnecting with the signals the body sends before the mind starts rationalizing fear or comfort. Instinct, when combined with awareness, becomes precision. Self-mastery is where discipline and instinct meet. An animal that survives is not one that acts randomly, but one that knows when to move and when to remain still. A predator does not chase every movement it sees. It waits, it observes, it conserves energy. This restraint is a form of mastery. Humans often confuse self-mastery with suppression, believing they must eliminate desire, emotion, or ambition. In reality, self-mastery is about control, not denial. It is the ability to feel deeply without being ruled by feeling, to act decisively without being reckless, to remain calm in chaos without becoming passive. Spirit animals also represent honesty. An animal does not pretend to be something it is not. A snake does not apologize for shedding its skin. A wolf does not feel guilt for being solitary. A lion does not ask permission to lead. Each creature accepts its nature fully, and within that acceptance lies power. Humans struggle because they reject their nature, comparing themselves endlessly to others. The concept of a spirit animal is a mirror, not a costume. It asks you to observe your tendencies without judgment and then take responsibility for refining them. There is also a deep lesson in how animals relate to their environment. They do not fight reality, they adapt. When conditions change, they change. When resources are scarce, they conserve. When danger appears, they respond immediately. Humans, on the other hand, often resist what is happening, clinging to how things used to be or how they wish things were. This resistance drains energy and creates suffering. The spirit animal teaches flexibility without losing identity. Adaptation is not weakness, it is intelligence in motion. Another overlooked aspect is patience. Many animals spend more time waiting than acting. The moment of action is short, but it is preceded by long periods of stillness. This contrasts sharply with modern human behavior, where constant movement is mistaken for productivity. Discipline includes knowing when not to act. Instinct includes sensing the right moment. Self-mastery includes resisting the urge to react just to feel in control. The spirit animal embodies this balance naturally without forcing it. Aggression is another quality often misunderstood. In animals, aggression is not emotional. It is purposeful. It appears when necessary and disappears when the situation is resolved. Humans, however, often carry aggression long after the moment has passed, turning it into resentment, anger, or bitterness. This is energy without mastery. The spirit animal shows that power does not need to linger. It is applied precisely and then released. Fear also plays a different role in animals. Fear sharpens awareness instead of paralyzing action. It heightens the senses and focuses attention. Humans often let fear dominate their imagination, creating scenarios that never happen. The spirit animal teaches that fear is a signal, not a sentence. It exists to inform, not to control. Discipline allows you to listen to fear without obeying it blindly. Instinct allows you to respond appropriately. Self-mastery allows you to move forward, even when fear is present. The idea of a spirit animal is not about adopting traits that do not belong to you. It is about recognizing patterns within yourself and learning from nature how those patterns can be expressed in a balanced way. If your energy is intense, the lesson is control. If your energy is subtle, the lesson is assertiveness. If your energy is observant, the lesson is decisive action. Nature does not favor extremes. It favors balance achieved through constant adjustment. Ultimately, spirit animals remind humans of something they have forgotten. Strength is quiet, awareness is powerful, and mastery is internal. Discipline creates structure, instinct provides direction, and self-mastery ensures that neither runs unchecked. When these three are aligned, action becomes efficient, emotion becomes informative rather than overwhelming, and identity becomes stable rather than reactive. The animal does not seek enlightenment, yet it lives in alignment. Humans seek meaning, but often ignore alignment. The spirit animal exists as a symbol to bridge that gap, not as mythology, but as a practical reminder that the most advanced form of control is not dominance over others, but command over oneself, exercised moment by moment through awareness, restraint, and intentional action, guided by an understanding of one's own nature and limits, shaped by experience rather than fantasy, grounded in reality rather than desire. Knowing your nature is the first step to controlling it, because you cannot guide what you refuse to see. Most people live in conflict with themselves, not because they are weak, but because they are unaware. They react, justify, repeat, and defend patterns without ever stopping to ask where those patterns come from. Control is often misunderstood as force, as if strength means overpowering impulses. In reality, control begins with recognition. Until you understand your tendencies, your habits, your emotional triggers, and your natural responses, you are not in control. You are simply being carried. Human nature operates through patterns. The way you respond to stress, the way you seek comfort, the way you react to criticism or praise, all follow predictable routes. These patterns feel personal, but they are mechanical. When left unexamined, they run automatically. This is why people say things like, "I don't know why I did that," or "That's just how I am." These statements are admissions of unconsciousness. Knowing your nature means observing these patterns without attachment or shame. It means seeing yourself as you are, not as you wish to be seen. Self-knowledge requires honesty, and honesty is uncomfortable. It exposes contradictions between values and behavior. A person may believe they are calm, yet explode under pressure. Another may believe they are disciplined, yet avoid effort when it becomes uncomfortable. Knowing your nature is not about labeling yourself as good or bad. It is about clarity. Clarity removes confusion. Confusion is what makes control impossible. When you are confused about who you are, every decision feels heavy, every challenge feels personal, and every setback feels like an identity threat. Control without knowledge becomes suppression. Suppression creates tension, and tension eventually breaks. Many people try to control themselves through rules, guilt, or fear, but these methods fail because they do not address the source. Knowing your nature allows you to work with your energy instead of against it. A person with intense emotional energy does not need to become emotionless. They need structure. A person with restless energy does not need to become passive. They need direction. Control is alignment, not elimination. Awareness turns reaction into choice. The moment you recognize an impulse as it arises, you create space between stimulus and response. In that space, control becomes possible. Without awareness, there is no space, only reaction. This is why people regret words spoken in anger or actions taken in frustration. The action was not chosen, it was released. Knowing your nature shortens this gap over time. You begin to recognize your internal signals earlier. A tightening in the chest, a shift in breathing, a familiar emotional surge. These signals are not enemies, they are information. Many people avoid self-knowledge because they fear limitation. They believe that understanding their nature will box them in. In truth, the opposite is true. What you do not understand controls you. What you understand becomes flexible. When you know your tendencies, you stop being surprised by them. You stop identifying with every thought and emotion. You stop saying, "This is me," and start saying, "This is happening within me." That shift creates freedom. Freedom does not come from endless options. It comes from stability within yourself. Knowing your nature also changes how you pursue growth. Instead of copying others, you build according to your structure. A method that works for one person may fail for another, not because one is weaker, but because their nature differs. Discipline looks different depending on energy. Focus looks different depending on temperament. Control is personal. When you try to adopt systems that contradict your nature, you burn out or quit. When you design systems that respect your nature while challenging its weaknesses, progress becomes sustainable. There is also humility in self-knowledge. It removes arrogance and self-deception. When you see your limitations clearly, you stop pretending. You stop blaming others for patterns you refuse to address. This humility is not weakness. It is strength grounded in reality. A person who knows their nature does not overestimate themselves, but they also do not underestimate their potential. They know what requires effort and what requires restraint. Knowing your nature also improves relationships. Many conflicts arise not from malice, but from unrecognized patterns colliding. When you understand your own triggers, you stop projecting them onto others. You listen more clearly. You respond rather than react. Control in this sense is not dominance, but stability. Others feel it. A controlled person does not need to assert themselves constantly. Their presence carries weight because it is consistent. Nature itself offers this lesson repeatedly. A river does not try to flow like a mountain. A tree does not compete with the wind. Each operates within its nature, and within that acceptance lies power. Humans struggle because they resist their nature while being controlled by it unconsciously. Knowing your nature brings alignment between who you are and how you act. That alignment reduces internal friction, which is where wasted energy lives. Control is not a final state. It is a continuous practice. Knowing your nature is not a one-time realization, but an ongoing observation. You change as you grow, and your nature expresses itself differently at different stages of life. Awareness must evolve with experience. The more you observe yourself, the less dramatic life becomes. Challenges still exist, emotions still arise, but they no longer dictate your actions. You are no longer at the mercy of impulse. Ultimately, knowing your nature means accepting responsibility for your inner world. It means stopping the search for external control and turning attention inward. When you know your patterns, you anticipate them. When you anticipate them, you prepare. When you prepare, you choose. Control is not about perfection. It is about consistency. The consistent practice of awareness, the consistent recognition of impulse, the consistent decision to act with intention rather than habit, shaping your behavior through understanding instead of force, refining your responses through observation instead of judgment, building inner order where chaos once lived, until control becomes less about effort and more about clarity, carried quietly in how you speak, how you listen, how you move, how you pause, and how you respond to the world as it is rather than how you wish it to be. Strength without awareness becomes weakness, because power that is not understood cannot be directed. When strength exists on its own, detached from perception and self-knowledge, it moves blindly. It reacts instead of choosing, pushes instead of guiding, and consumes more than it creates. What appears formidable on the surface often collapses from within when there is no awareness to stabilize it. True strength is not defined by intensity or force, but by the ability to apply power with clarity and restraint. Awareness is what gives strength direction. Without it, strength becomes impulsive. Physical strength without awareness turns into aggression. Emotional strength without awareness turns into emotional suppression or outbursts. Mental strength without awareness turns into arrogance and rigidity. In each case, the same pattern emerges. The stronger the unexamined force, the greater the damage it causes both to others and to the individual wielding it. Awareness acts as a compass. Without it, strength may move quickly, but it moves without purpose. History repeatedly demonstrates this truth. Individuals who rise through raw ambition or dominance often fall because they fail to see their own blind spots. They mistake momentum for control and resistance for respect. Their strength creates fear, not stability. Fear may produce short-term results, but it erodes trust and clarity over time. When awareness is absent, feedback is ignored, warnings are dismissed, and limits are denied. Strength then becomes brittle. The moment reality pushes back, it shatters. On a personal level, many people believe that being strong means never feeling doubt, never slowing down, and never admitting vulnerability. This belief creates internal conflict. Emotions are buried instead of understood. Stress accumulates instead of being processed. The person appears resilient, but internally they are fragmented. Without awareness, strength turns inward and becomes self-destructive. Burnout, resentment, and emotional numbness are not signs of weakness. They are symptoms of unexamined strength being forced beyond its capacity. Awareness also reveals proportion. Not every situation requires full force. Not every disagreement requires confrontation. Not every challenge requires domination. A person who lacks awareness treats every problem as a threat and every threat as a battle. This constant state of escalation drains energy and clouds judgment. Strength applied everywhere becomes ineffective everywhere. Awareness teaches selectivity. It teaches when to act, when to wait, and when to withdraw. This selectivity preserves energy and sharpens impact. There is also a deep connection between awareness and humility. Strength without awareness often confuses confidence with certainty. The individual believes they are right because they are powerful, not because they are accurate. This closes the door to learning. Awareness, on the other hand, keeps strength flexible. It allows a person to update their understanding, adjust their approach, and refine their actions. This flexibility is not weakness. It is adaptive strength, capable of enduring change rather than breaking under it. In relationships, unexamined strength creates imbalance. A person who dominates conversations, decisions, or emotions may believe they are leading, but they are often compensating for a lack of awareness. True leadership requires sensitivity to context, to others' needs, and to timing. Without awareness, strength silences rather than supports. It overwhelms rather than stabilizes. Over time, this erodes connection and replaces it with distance or resentment. Strength that isolates is already failing. Awareness also guards against self-deception. People often overestimate their capacity and underestimate the cost of constant exertion. They push harder instead of thinking deeper. This leads to diminishing returns. Effort increases while results stagnate. Awareness invites reflection. It asks whether the current use of strength is effective or merely habitual. Without this reflection, strength becomes repetitive and predictable, easily countered by circumstances or others who operate with greater clarity. Even discipline can become a weakness without awareness. Rigid routines followed without understanding can create stagnation. A person may pride themselves on consistency while ignoring signs that adjustment is needed. Awareness introduces responsiveness. It allows discipline to evolve rather than calcify. Strength that refuses to adapt becomes obsolete, no matter how impressive it once was. Fear plays a subtle role in unexamined strength. Often, excessive force is driven by unacknowledged fear. Fear of losing control, fear of appearing weak, fear of being challenged. Without awareness, this fear hides behind aggression or overconfidence. The individual believes they are acting from strength, when in reality they are reacting to insecurity. Awareness exposes this dynamic, allowing strength to be grounded in confidence rather than defended through force. Nature reflects this principle clearly. A storm without direction destroys indiscriminately. A river without banks floods and loses its form. Power requires containment to be useful. Awareness provides that containment for human strength. It shapes, limits, and focuses power so it can build rather than destroy. Without awareness, strength spills everywhere and accomplishes little beyond temporary impact. Ultimately, awareness transforms strength from a blunt instrument into a precise tool. It aligns power with intention and action with understanding. Strength guided by awareness is calm, measured, and effective. It does not need to announce itself. It is felt through consistency and reliability rather than intensity. When awareness is absent, strength becomes loud, exhausting, and fragile, mistaking pressure for progress and force for control, collapsing under its own weight when circumstances shift, leaving behind confusion where clarity could have existed, conflict where stability could have grown, and effort without mastery, proving again and again that power without understanding undermines itself from the inside. Every spirit animal has power and a shadow because no force in nature exists without balance. Power is what is visible, admired, and desired. Shadow is what is hidden, ignored, or denied. Together they form a complete structure. When people speak of spirit animals, they often focus only on strength, courage, wisdom, or freedom, but this selective attention creates distortion. Power without acknowledgement of shadow becomes fantasy. Shadow without recognition of power becomes limitation. Understanding both is the only way to move towards self-mastery. In nature, an animal's strength is inseparable from its vulnerability. The speed of a predator requires immense energy and recovery. The sharp focus of a hunter demands long periods of stillness. The independence of a solitary animal comes with exposure and risk. These are not flaws, they are natural consequences. Humans, however, tend to idolize the power and reject the shadow. They want the confidence without the arrogance, the intensity without the exhaustion, the freedom without the responsibility. This rejection creates internal conflict because the shadow does not disappear when ignored. It simply operates unconsciously. The shadow is not evil. It is untrained energy. When power is expressed without awareness, the shadow takes control. The same drive that fuels ambition can turn into obsession. The same sensitivity that allows empathy can become emotional overwhelm. The same confidence that inspires leadership can become dominance or pride. The shadow reveals where power lacks discipline. It points directly to the areas that require awareness and restraint. Many people resist acknowledging their shadow because it threatens their self-image. They prefer to identify with the noble traits of their nature and distance themselves from the darker ones. This resistance creates blindness. Blindness allows patterns to repeat. When a person says, "This always happens to me," it is often the shadow operating unchecked. Recognition is not condemnation. Seeing the shadow clearly is an act of strength, not weakness. Animals do not struggle with this duality because they do not judge themselves. A snake sheds its skin without shame. A wolf defends its territory without guilt. Humans, burdened by identity and ego, often turn natural traits into moral conflicts. The concept of the spirit animal is meant to simplify, not complicate. It offers a clear reflection. This is your power, and this is the cost of misusing it. The shadow also serves as a teacher. It highlights imbalance. When behavior becomes excessive, reactive, or destructive, the shadow is signaling a lack of awareness. Ignoring this signal leads to escalation. Listening to it leads to refinement. A person who understands their shadow can anticipate it. They can feel when intensity is becoming aggression, when confidence is becoming arrogance, when focus is becoming rigidity. This anticipation creates choice. There is danger in believing that growth means eliminating the shadow. That belief creates repression. Repressed energy does not disappear. It leaks out in unpredictable ways. The goal is integration. Integration means accepting that power and shadow are linked and learning to regulate their expression. This is why self-mastery is not about purity, but balance. Balance is dynamic. It requires constant adjustment, not perfection. The shadow also reveals why people admire certain qualities in others while condemning similar traits in themselves. Projection occurs when shadow remains unacknowledged. A person may criticize ambition in others because they fear their own. They may resent confidence because they distrust their own power. Recognizing the shadow dissolves projection. It brings ownership back where it belongs. In relationships, unacknowledged shadow creates conflict. People are triggered not by what is said, but by what is touched internally. When the shadow is unconscious, it reacts defensively. It interprets feedback as attack and challenge as threat. Awareness softens this reaction. It allows a person to respond with curiosity rather than hostility. This does not mean tolerating disrespect. It means choosing response over reflex. The power of a spirit animal often attracts people, but the shadow determines sustainability. Raw intensity may impress at first, but without control it burns bridges. Deep sensitivity may create connection, but without boundaries it leads to exhaustion. Strategic thinking may produce success, but without flexibility it creates isolation. The shadow is not a punishment for having power. It is the price of ignoring balance. Understanding both sides also prevents self-sabotage. Many people undermine their progress because they are unaware of how their shadow emerges under stress. Pressure amplifies untrained traits. Without preparation, the shadow takes over at the worst possible moment. Awareness acts as a buffer. It allows the person to slow down, recalibrate, and reassert control before damage occurs. Nature never separates strength from cost. Muscles tear to grow stronger. Bones harden under pressure. Animals adapt through exposure, not avoidance. The shadow exists for the same reason. It is feedback. It shows where growth is required. When embraced consciously, It becomes a source of wisdom rather than shame. The danger lies in romanticizing power and demonizing shadow. This creates imbalance and illusion. True strength comes from seeing the whole picture. When a person understands their spirit animal fully, they stop chasing an idealized version of themselves. They work with what is real. They respect their limits while expanding their capacity. They recognize when to push and when to pause. Power without awareness feeds the shadow. Awareness without acceptance weakens power. Integration strengthens both. The spirit animal is not a symbol of perfection, but of truth. It shows what you carry and what you must manage. The moment you acknowledge both, the internal struggle softens. Energy stops fighting itself. Action becomes cleaner. Identity becomes stable. Growth becomes sustainable. Mastery emerges not from denying darkness, but from understanding how to move through it without being consumed by it. Using awareness as the guiding force that keeps power from turning inward or outward in destructive ways, shaping strength into something that can endure pressure, change, and time without collapsing under its own unexamined weight. You are not here to change your nature. You are here to refine it. This idea confronts one of the most common inner conflicts people experience: the belief that something about them is fundamentally wrong and must be replaced. From an early age, many are taught to suppress traits that do not fit expectations. Too emotional, too quiet, too intense, too cautious, too ambitious. Over time, this creates a fractured relationship with the self. Instead of understanding who they are, people wage war against their own nature, exhausting themselves in the process. Nature is not a mistake. What you carry within you exists for a reason, even if that reason is not immediately clear. Refinement does not mean denial. It does not mean forcing yourself into a personality that feels unnatural. Refinement means shaping raw material into something functional, controlled, and purposeful. Just as iron is not discarded because it is rough, human nature is not meant to be erased because it is imperfect. It is meant to be worked. Changing your nature implies rejection. Refining it implies responsibility. When you try to change yourself entirely, you create resistance. Resistance breeds frustration, guilt, and inconsistency. When you refine yourself, you create cooperation. You stop fighting your impulses and start training them. This shift alone conserves enormous energy. Growth becomes sustainable because it aligns with who you actually are rather than who you think you should be. Many people misunderstand self-improvement as becoming someone else. They adopt habits, behaviors, and identities that do not match their internal structure. At first, this feels motivating, but over time it becomes draining. The body resists what the mind forces. Refinement listens before it directs. It asks how your energy moves naturally, then introduces discipline to guide that movement. A river is not refined by forcing it uphill. It is refined by building banks that give it direction. Your strengths and weaknesses are often two sides of the same trait. Intensity fuels passion, but also impatience. Sensitivity creates empathy, but also vulnerability. Confidence enables leadership, but risks arrogance. Trying to eliminate the weakness usually damages the strength. Refinement teaches balance. Instead, it shows you how to keep the power while reducing the cost. This requires awareness, patience, and repetition, not self-criticism. Refinement also demands honesty. You must be willing to see yourself clearly without romanticizing or condemning your tendencies. This clarity removes confusion. When you know what triggers you, what excites you, what drains you, and what steadies you, you stop being surprised by yourself. Surprise is what causes regret. Awareness is what creates choice. Refinement lives in that choice. There is also a deep humility in refinement. It accepts that growth is gradual. You do not outgrow your nature overnight. You train it through consistent practice. Just as a martial artist does not eliminate aggression, but channels it through discipline, you do not eliminate desire, fear, or ambition. You refine their expression. This takes time. Impatience with the process often leads people back into self-rejection, mistaking slow progress for failure. Refinement transforms struggle into training. Challenges stop feeling like proof that something is wrong with you and start feeling like tests of skill. When you react poorly, you do not collapse into shame. You observe. You adjust. You try again. This mindset builds resilience. It keeps growth grounded in reality rather than fantasy. You stop chasing perfection and start building stability. Trying to change your nature often comes from comparison. You see qualities in others that you admire and judge yourself for not having them. Refinement ends this comparison. It focuses inward. It recognizes that effectiveness is personal. A quiet person does not need to become loud to be influential. An intense person does not need to become soft to be wise. Each nature has its own path to mastery. Refinement finds that path. There is also freedom in refinement. When you stop trying to escape yourself, you relax. This relaxation is not laziness. It is acceptance without complacency. From this state, effort becomes cleaner. You work with less internal resistance. You make fewer dramatic swings between extremes. Progress becomes subtle but consistent. Refinement also protects against self-sabotage. When people try to become someone else, they often abandon the effort as soon as it becomes uncomfortable, using their nature as an excuse. When people refine their nature, discomfort becomes expected. It is part of the process. You are not betraying yourself by growing. You are honoring yourself by becoming more capable. Your nature is the foundation, not the ceiling. It sets the starting conditions, not the final outcome. Refinement expands capacity. It allows you to handle more responsibility, more pressure, and more complexity without losing balance. This is what real maturity looks like. Not the absence of flaws, but the presence of control. Refinement also deepens self-respect. When you see yourself consistently choosing awareness over impulse, restraint over reaction, and intention over habit, trust builds internally. You begin to rely on yourself. This inner trust is quiet but powerful. It changes how you move through the world. Decisions feel grounded. Emotions feel manageable. Identity feels stable. You are not meant to become unrecognizable to yourself. You are meant to become more precise, sharper in judgment, calmer in response, clearer in direction. Refinement removes excess without removing essence. It strengthens structure without hardening it. It allows you to express your nature fully without being consumed by it. The belief that you must change who you are often leads to endless dissatisfaction. There is always another version to chase, another flaw to fix, another identity to adopt. Refinement ends this chase. It anchors growth in reality. You work with what exists. You improve what can be trained. You accept what cannot be changed while learning how to manage it effectively. In this way, refinement becomes a lifelong practice rather than a destination. Each stage of life reveals new aspects of your nature that require adjustment. What worked before may need modification. Refinement adapts, it evolves. It stays connected to the present rather than clinging to outdated self-images. When you stop trying to change your nature and commit to refining it, internal conflict quiets. Energy stops leaking into self-judgment. Focus sharpens. Growth becomes intentional rather than reactive. You stop asking who you should be and start becoming more skilled at being who you are, shaping your impulses through awareness, your habits through discipline, and your identity through consistent, conscious action guided by understanding rather than resistance.